All right. I mentioned this earlier, but I guess it was yesterday. We had a member of actually the president of the Chino Valley School Board, Sonia Shaw, on the program. And she was discussing, maybe it was Monday, she was discussing, no, it was Tuesday. I'll get my day straight. Anyway, she was discussing the death threats that she has received as a result of the board taking the position of protecting children and parental rights by requiring schools to inform parents if a child decides they want to identify as a different gender. If they use a different pronoun, they start using the restroom that's not in alignment with their biological sex, the parents have to be notified. Common sense, right? Not in California. So the governor's come after them, and as a result of the governor coming after them, well, that has given a green light to every crazy out there, the Antifa types. And so they're threatening to kill them and you know, the usual stuff from the left. So she was on the program, and she said, you know, pray for us. We're going to stand our ground. And so what I'd like you to do, those of you who heard the interview, if not, you can go to tonyperkins.com and watch it. But what we're seeing in education, we just heard from the superintendent of Oklahoma. We heard Monday from the superintendent of Virginia. Look, elections are making a difference at the state level, and men and women of conservative Christian conviction are stepping forward. We need to stand with them. So if you'd like to send a note thanking the school board there in Chino Hills, California, for their stand, and let them know that you're praying for them, simply text the word courage to 67742. That's the word courage to 67742. You'll get a link. You can sign it, and we're going to send that to them. Again, courage to 67742. Okay, as I was discussing earlier in the program, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandra Mayorkas appeared on Capitol Hill today, answering questions on the Biden administration's handling or lack of handling of the southern border, which is nothing more than a chaotic situation right now. Also today, the House Homeland Security Committee held a hearing to discuss how the Biden administration's mismanagement of the southern border has emboldened the Mexican crime cartels on both sides of the border. Well, joining me now to share his reaction to today's hearing and more is Congressman Eli Crane. He serves on the House Homeland Security Committee, the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and the House Committee on Small Business. Eli is a veteran of the United States Navy, where he served as a Navy SEAL. He now represents the 1st Congressional District of Arizona. Congressman Crane, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Tony. I appreciate it.
So let me just jump right into the hearing today. What stood out the most to you from the House Homeland Security Committee hearing today?
You know, it was a pretty bizarre hearing, Tony. It's really hard to continually watch my colleagues on the other side of the aisle gaslight and misdirect witnesses in the chamber and even the American people. Instead of focusing on the fact that our current commander-in-chief during his campaign told the American people and quite frankly the world that if you feel oppressed, you should come here, and that anybody seeking asylum, will have the chance to be heard. We all knew at the time what this was going to lead to. We knew it was going to lead to basically opening the floodgates, and anybody who wanted to come to the United States would be coming here, and it would completely overwhelm an already taxed border security system. And so once again, we sat there in the hearing. We had a chance, we had 3 witnesses. One of them was a beautiful mother from Texas who had lost her mother and her child, who were traveling and in their vehicle, and they were hit by an individual who was fleeing from law enforcement. I think he was doing over 100 miles per hour, and all the while streaming it on Facebook Live. And I think he had 11 illegals in his vehicle. And so these are the types of things that we see every day, and we're really pushing to go back towards border security policies that we saw under the Trump administration that drastically reduced the amount of crime. Quite frankly, the folks that were, trying to come into our country illegally.
Let's talk about something that you're very familiar with, and that is those who come into this country to do harm to this country. those who were on the terror watch list. Your time in the Navy, you went to other countries to help eliminate that threat. Well, now we've got an open border, and that was part of the conversation today, was talking about how the mishandling of the border is making America more vulnerable because of those who are slipping across. Talk about that.
No, it most certainly is, Tony, and I think it's obvious to the American people. They know exactly what's going on. They knew when a serious candidate for the United States of America was saying the things that Joe Biden was saying on the campaign trail, and then we realized that reality, that pretty horrific reality, when he took office, and he did basically open the border. He got rid on day one of many policies that were keeping Americans and our community safe. And now the saddest thing about it is, we have, I think, over 70,000, people a year, families being destroyed, from fentanyl. We have families who are losing loved ones to MS-13 gang violence. We have families being torn apart and human beings, quite frankly, being destroyed because of the sex trafficking epidemic that's going on in this country, that has recently been thankfully highlighted in culture with the movie Sound of Freedom that has come out. But it's a complete disaster down there. And, it's the sad thing is, Tony, a lot of the policies that we're working are pretty common sense, but my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to continue to play politics and act as if they care about the problem.
So I'm going to ask you to explain that a little bit if you can. These are common sense policies. I mean, there's nothing difficult about this. You have a country, you have borders, you protect it because you want to protect the people on the inside, and you have a humanitarian way of allowing people to come into the country. Why is the president and the secretary and the Democrats so resistant to work with Republicans to establish these common sense policies?
Well, Tony, I can't really nail down exactly. I have some theories. I think there are a lot of politics involved. I think it's pretty clear that the media, the Democrat Party, and quite frankly, a lot of elitists around the world hate Donald Trump and everything that he did, everything that he stood for. And I think that they see the border wall as an extension of Donald Trump, and therefore they're not even allowed to acknowledge that walls and barriers have worked for, since the beginning of time, whether at military bases and prisons, around our, own personal homes. But that's one of the things right there that just goes to show you these people aren't serious about protecting the people that we're supposed to be protecting in this government. And they continue to talk about immigration reform. Well, I'm going to tell you this, Tony. We used to have a saying in the SEAL teams. The saying was crawl, walk, run. You never get to run if you don't learn how to walk, and you never get to walk if you don't learn how to crawl. And so we base all of our training on, slowly ramping up the complexities of, the mission sets that we are forced to do. And my message to the American people is this: if you can't get the basics down, if you can't crawl, if you can't acknowledge that walls and barriers are a part of a security system with overlapping deterrents that, work in conjunction with each other to protect the very people that we're supposed to be protecting in this country, you'll never get to the run phase or the immigration reform that my colleagues seem bent on, focusing on.
Right. Congressman Crane, I want to switch gears here. This is something you and I have talked about off the air. 3 years ago, when I was serving as the chairman of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom for the first time, we recommended that the country of India, which is arguably in name the largest democracy in the world because of its population. It's not a democracy based upon the way it operates, but nonetheless, it's declared that. We recommended it to the Department of State as a country of particular concern, meaning that there was egregious, ongoing, systematic violation of religious freedom in that country. I know you share that concern. You've raised that issue. In fact, just recently, there has been a video released of the horrific treatment of Christians in the northern part of India and Manipur, where we saw women sexually abused, men killed by the Hindu majority coming into these villages, burning them and destroying them. The Biden administration, and quite frankly business as well, that sees this as a huge market to go into, is turning a blind eye to this.
Absolutely, Tony. And to be perfectly honest, this was not an issue that I knew much about until a couple years ago. My wife, Jen, and I, we met a man of faith from India years ago, and we decided to support his ministry financially. And so we became friends. And over the last couple of years, he had routinely sent us videos and, video documentation of some of the religious persecution that was going on in India. And I couldn't believe some of the things that I was seeing. And, it feels like the videos get more frequent and quite frankly, more disturbing by the month. And so this was something that I knew I couldn't ignore any longer. I had to start raising this concern with authorities, especially in the job that I have now. And so it wasn't just but last week that myself and Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida brought in the Deputy Chief of Mission of India into my office to talk about religious persecution. And I can tell you, Tony, that meeting did not go well at all. She completely denied the context and the premise of the concern that we were raising about religious persecution, said it really wasn't a thing. Don't believe everything you read in the headlines or see in social media. And I told her this wasn't from social media. This was from a friend of mine, who is a man of faith in India and has seen it firsthand. And I just felt like we got nowhere. And I can't help but think, Tony, because she's an ambassador of that country, that that same attitude probably comes from the top. And so myself and Congresswoman Luna are getting ready to send a letter to the president of India, discussing our concern. And we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that, people all around the world are able to practice their religion, whatever that religion is. And in this case, it happens to be Christians that are being persecuted, which is obviously near and dear to us. But the bottom line is, for a country that we give so much foreign aid to, we give billions and billions of dollars to India. You would think that they would be, treating their citizens with a little bit more respect. And this is something that we need to shine a light on.
Yeah, and because of its population, they have the largest English-speaking population, or soon to be, in the world. And corporate America is flocking to India to make investments. So it's not just the government. I mean, we had President Biden rolled out the red carpet last month for Prime Minister Modi. No discussion that we're aware of. And I know in my last year on the commission, with the Biden administration, dealing with them, there was no interest in discussing religious freedom in India. And quite frankly, it was a little difficult with the Trump administration, primarily pushed by the business community, seeing this as a huge market. So there's responsibility here on both sides, but human rights, and most fundamental among those human rights is religious freedom, has to be something that we as Americans respect and protect.
Absolutely, Tony. And one of the things that I want to be clear about, and one of the things that I brought up with the Deputy Chief of Mission, was this. I realize and acknowledge there are plenty of atrocities that take place in this country, my country, the country I represent, the country I love. And so I totally understand that things like this happen all over the world. My problem is that there was no acknowledgement whatsoever. There was no, hey, we'll look into this incident and get back to you. It was a complete stonewall. And that to me was alarming and telling. And I know that Representative Luna felt the same exact way. And so we're going to continue to try and shine a light on this. And hopefully the Christians and quite frankly, other religious believers in India, will see maybe some of the persecution let up in the future if we get loud enough about this issue and show the government and the leaders within India that this is something that is very important and should be taken very seriously.
Well, Congressman Crane, I appreciate you putting a spotlight on this and not letting go of it. As you said, problems around the world, but if we don't acknowledge them, they never will get any better. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I appreciate it.